you've always found it difficult to understand the Natalie Bray's method of basic bodice pattern drafting, then you should watch this video. Hi guys, it's Lami of LabelledByLami and you're welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I am going to be sharing with you how to draft a basic bodice block using the Natalie Bray's method, but in a very simplified form. If you've always found it difficult to understand the Natalie Bray's method of basic bodice pattern drafting, then you should watch this video. And while at it, please do not forget to give this video a thumbs up and drop your questions, your comments, your suggestions and your thoughts in the comment section, and I will attend to them as soon as I can. Also, do not forget to support the channel by subscribing to it, and please turn on your bell notifications so that you can get video notifications as soon as they drop. Okay, let's not waste more time. Let's get straight into it.
The first thing I will be doing is to find the middle point of my paper, and I am doing that by measuring the width of my paper, and I'll just go ahead to mark that midpoint. Then I go up and down the paper to do the same measurement so I can get a straight line. Here I am marking 1 inch below the top of my paper, and that will serve as my top line. And from this point I am measuring the nape of neck to waist measurement, which is 15.5 inches plus 2 inches extra. So I am basically just marking the same measurement so that I can achieve a straight line. Next, I will establish the half bust measurement plus 2 inches. My half bust is 16.5 inches. Adding 2 inches to that will give me 18.5 inches. Remember that we found the midpoint of our paper earlier. From that point, I will measure 9.35, approximately 9.5, to both sides to give me 18.5 inches in total. By the time I am done with it, my paper should measure half bust plus 2 inches in width and length to waist measurement plus 2 inches. By the time I am done, I have an almost perfect square. Now that the paper is prepped, I will proceed to drafting the pattern, and I am starting with the back pattern. For the back pattern, I will come down from my top line by 1/4 inches like so, and I am labeling it 0.0. For a bust size bigger than 36, I advise that you come down by 1.5 inches, and for bust 42 and above, I advise that you come down by 1 inches and 3/4. From 0.0, I am measuring the waist to length, and that is 15.5 inches. I will go ahead and mark that, and from this point I will square across the paper, and this will serve as the waistline. For the bust line, I am dividing the distance between 0.0 and waist to length measurement into 2, and that gives me 7 inches and 3/4. I will then add half an inch below it, and from this point I will go ahead and square this line across the paper. Let me add at this point that if you have a bigger bust size, you should add at least 3/4 inches to your own measurement instead of the half inch that I added. For the back line, I am dividing the distance between 0.0 and bust line into 2, which is 8.25 inches, and that gives me 4.25, and I will square the line across the paper. For the shoulder line, I will measure 1.25 inches down from 0.0, and I will square it across the paper as well, and I will just go ahead and label it. For the neckline, I will square out 0.0 to about 7 inches. Now that we have the neck, back, bust and waistline sorted, we can now start imputing the measurements. To get the neck width measurement, simply add 2 inches to the half bust, that is half bust measurement plus 2 inches. Then go ahead to divide it by 8 inches. For me, it is to 2.5. and I will input that on the neckline and mark the point. I will then go up from that point by 3/4 of an inch, and I will label this point the neck point or MP. And from the MP I will draw out a curve, and here we have our neckline. I will then move to the back line and measure the half back measurement. Back measurement for this pattern is 14. Now 14 divided by 2 gives 7. So, and on the shoulder line I will measure half back plus 3/4 inches. On the bust line, I will also measure half back, which is 7 inches, and I will add 2 inches and 1/4. Next is to rule the side seam line. From the last point on the bust line, we will drop a perpendicular straight line onto the waistline. Then I will draw a slant line from neck point to shoulder point, and that will be the shoulder seam line. On the bust line, from the half back measurement, I am ruling a straight line that's about 1.5 inches long as a guide to achieve a smooth curve, and from the intersection I will rule a 3/4 slant guideline on angle 45 degrees. This is totally optional, but it's definitely helpful. So now I am just making sure that my armhole curve passes through all the points. Now this is the armhole curve, looking all smooth and nice. However, the lines on our bodies are not straight, therefore I need to create a slant by going in by ½ inch on the waistline and then creating a slant from that point and joining it to the armhole point. The measurement of your shoulder slant should be 3/4 or 1 inch shorter than the shoulder slant measurement on the pattern paper. The extra 3/4 or 1 inch is for darts. So to get the shoulder dart, I will divide the exact shoulder slant measurement into 2, and I will measure one half from shoulder point and another half from neck point. Whatever is left in the middle will then become the dart. I will then go ahead to draw the dart, which is about 3.5 inches, and now our back bodice is ready. For the front bodice pattern, the top edge corner will be the point 0. Next, I will establish the chest line, and to get the chest line, I will measure 1.5 inches above the bust line and square it across. To get the front neck width, I will measure 2.5 inches, same way I did in the back. At this point, it's important to let you know that no matter the size you're working with, as long as the bodice block is for an adult, the neck width must not be smaller than 2.5 inches. To get the front neck depth, I will measure 2 inches and 3/4 downwards from point 0. If you have bigger bust, feel free to use 3 inches or 3.5 inches as the case may be. So now I am just drawing a guideline by making sure that I extend the lines from NP and neck width to form a square. It is through this guide that I will draw the neckline. Please just pay attention to what I am doing. It is not a compulsory step. It is just necessary to get a smooth curve. We'll rule a slant line from NP to neck width point. Then I find the midpoint of the line, and from the midpoint outwards I measured 0.5 inches. I will then go ahead to connect the points to get a smooth neckline curve. Next is to construct the shoulder line, and I am just measuring 4 inches and 3/4. Basically, I will measure the back shoulder slant minus the dart, and whatever I have left will be the shoulder slant measurement as well. And for this tutorial, it is 4 inches and 3/4. So from this point, I will measure 2 inches and 1/4 below the top line, and I will then go ahead to draw the temporary shoulder line from the NP to the last point. Next, I will be establishing the dart lines. and I will do that by dividing the chest measurement into 2. In this case, chest measurement is 14 divided into 2 equals 7. Then I will divide the half chest line into 2 to get 3.5 inches, and this will be the dot line. From the 3.5 inches, I will be ruling a vertical line, ensuring that it runs from the shoulder slant to 3/4 inches below the bust line, and this point will be known as point D. Now, from this line on the shoulder slant, I will measure 0.75 inches outwards, and from this point I will rule a slant line to join the line at point D, like so. This is one of the dart legs. Now, to get the front shoulder dart, I will be extending the already established shoulder slant by 2.5 inches. The 2.5 inches is the dart width, so altogether I have 7 inches and 1/4. At this point, I am just trying to define the shoulder dart by taking the left dart leg to match with right dart leg. As you can see, after folding it, I noticed that the lines didn't match, so I would simply just redraw my line from neck point to shoulder point like so, and then I will use my tracing wheel to trace it out like so, and then use my pencil to trace the line out. This is so that I have a well-defined dart, and also to avoid any shortage while sewing the dart. Next, I will be constructing the armhole, but I like to point out the fact that the chest measurement is now short by 3/4 inch because of the dart at this point. If I leave it like that, it is going to upset the armhole fit. So what I will then do is extend the chest line measurement by 3/4 to make up for what the dart took. Please rewatch this part if you find it confusing, but I hope you really understand what I just did. Next, I am dropping a straight line from the chest point to the bust line. Also, I will rule a line from the SP to the chest point. This will serve as a guide to drawing the armhole. Next, I am finding the angle 45 degrees from the intersection on the bust line. And once the angle is established, I will rule a 0.5 inches line. Then I will go ahead to draw the armhole by connecting the underarm point, the chest point, and the shoulder point like so. And there we have our armhole ready. At this point, I am measuring the armhole to ensure that it's accurate. For it to be accurate, it must give the top arm measurement plus 5 inches extra. So now that I am sure that the armhole is okay, I will come down on the center front waistline by 3/4 inch. This is to accommodate the stomach bulge and to avoid any form of tightness around the tummy. On the side, I will come down by 1/2 inch, and I will do same thing on the side of the back pattern as well. However, I will not extend the central back at all. Then I will connect the lines and draw them out. After joining them all, this is what it is looking like. Note that in Natalie Bray's method of pattern making, there is a point called the true bust line, which is the apex of the bust, the nipple point, otherwise known as point X. And to get the true bust line, I will simply measure 1.5 inches below the bust line like so, and I will square the line across. So now that I have gotten that out of the way, it is time to plan the waist dart. Now, from 1/2 inch below the true bust line, I will rule the dart line all the way down to the waistline like so. For the back dart line too, I divide the half back line into 2 to give me 3.5 inches dart. Now, let me say at this point that to shape the waist, you must understand that the way this pattern is constructed, there is quite a surplus around the waist. You could have around 2.5 inches to 3 inches surplus around the waist, but Natalie Bray has made a provision for the surplus to be taken out as darts in different areas of the waist, such as taking 3/4 of an inch from the center back, half an inch from the center front, and half an inch from both sides to create the inner seams. Here I am fixing this center back dart by measuring 3/4 of an inch away from the center back and then rolling a line from this point to join the back line like so. This is to eliminate any form of bulge at the back. This dart is only necessary if the style permits it though. If you will be using the dart, it is suggested that you go out on the neckline by 1/4 of an inch and from this point roll to join the back line. This is to ease the tight effect on the waist. After doing that, this is what it will look like. Now I am marking the inner side seam by simply measuring half an inch inwards on the side seam. The inner seam should however not be confused with the initial side seam. That is the outer seam line, while this new line is the inner seam line. You have a choice to use either of the seam lines depending on the kind of style or fit you're going for. So if you're doing a less cleaning style, then the outer seam may just be appropriate. But if you're doing a cleaning style or tight fitting style, for instance, you can go ahead and use the inner seam. For the center front as well, I will be measuring half an inch outwards, and as I did on the back, I will be joining this point to the chest line like so. This dart is necessary for if you're making a tight fitting style that has maybe a zipper or any form of closure on the center front, so that it is well laid on the body by giving the tummy and bust some fit. And just as I did in the back, to ease the tightness, come out by 1/4 of an inch on the neckline and then roll a line joining the 2 points. So when I cut, I will be cutting on this line. So now that I have dealt with all the fixed darts, it is time to construct the waist dart. For this pattern, the waist measurement is 27 inches. Since we are working with the half block here, I will divide the waist measurement by 2 and that gives me 13.5 inches. So I will go ahead and measure what I have left of the waistline after deducting all the fixed darts. On the back, I have 7 inches and 1/4, and altogether I have 14 inches and 3/4. Since my half waist is 13.5 inches, it means that what is left as the waist dart is 1 inch and 1/4, and this 1 inch and 1/4 allowance is what will now form the waist dart. Now I am going to distribute the dart allowance between the front and back, making sure that the front dart gets the bigger share. So the front gets 3/4 dart. This means 7/16 inches on each side, and on the back I will be doing 1/4 of an inch on each side of the dart leg. For the back shoulder dart, there is an explanation. So if your style permits it, you may go ahead to just stitch it like that, but alternatively, because it's a small dart, it can be easily eased off by measuring its width and then deducting it from the shoulder slant at shoulder point. For instance, the total measurement of the dart is 1 inch. I will just go to shoulder point and reduce it by 1 inch and then join the new point to the armhole and then cut on the new line. This choice is ultimately left to the designer to make. So basically, this is the simplified basic bodice block using Natalie Bray's method.